Good evening. Let me just start by saying just how thrilled we are to be here tonight. What better place to give a sneak peek of the worldwide sneak peek of the next version of Final Cut Pro to an audience, of 1,700 Final Cut Pro users. We're really excited about what we have to show today. We think that when you see it, you're going to be as excited as we are, because we think we have something which is as revolutionary as the first version of Final Cut Pro when it was introduced back in 1999. Now, if you remember, that version of Final Cut Pro was revolutionary in a number of different ways, not least of which it was $49,000 cheaper than its nearest competitor. It also happened to be the very first piece of software to deal exclusively with nonlinear editing in software. So you didn't need all of that extra hardware paraphernalia to get your content in and out. And finally, it was also the very first ever NLE to work with then the emerging format of the day, the digital format of the day, DV. Obviously, a few people still shooting on DV. So, cast your mind back, because you'll recall that this happened to be state-of-the-art at the time. And it was state-of-the-art because it had a FireWire port on it. And you could connect it to the FireWire port on your PowerMac G3. Running Final Cut Pro, and that's all you needed. Final Cut Pro, PowerMac G3, and one of these cameras. So now, let's fast forward to where we are today, 2011. And the current version of Final Cut Studio. Now, quite a lot has changed in that time. We've had an entire ecosystem which is built up around Final Cut Studio. We've had manufacturers, camera manufacturers as venerable as ARRI, build cameras specifically to encode into ProRes and capture QuickTime files with a specific purpose of working with Final Cut Pro. Now, this has meant that we now moved Final Cut Pro into more markets and more market segments than ever before. So now we have every major broadcaster on the planet relying on Final Cut Pro for mission-critical content delivery day in and day out. Now, of course, it comes as no surprise, of course, that it will be Final Cut Pro finds itself incredibly popular in also the independent film community. The power and performance, yes, exactly. The power and performance of Final Cut Pro and the affordability, the fact that you can walk into an Apple store in any main street in virtually any city in the world and pick up everything you need to give life to the vision and of the documentary that you have in your head is really incredible. At the other end of the spectrum, of course, we have the feature film editors. Now, these are a couple of the films that were edited on Final Cut Pro that were nominated for an Academy Award this year. These are not the only ones. In fact, we had the entire documentary film category was all edited on Final Cut Pro. But the reason why I wanted to highlight these is because, just like you guys, these are filmmakers that are coming back to Final Cut time after time. The Coen brothers and David Fincher have edited multiple feature films using Final Cut Pro. So the bottom line here is that no matter which market segment you belong to, broadcast, independent film, or feature film, people love Final Cut Pro. We have a 94% customer satisfaction ratio. That's absolutely incredible. People absolutely loved working with Final Cut Pro. And that means that we've steadily built our community up over the last few years. We've now crossed, in the end of last year, over 2 million Final Cut Pro users. Now, what's significant about that is not just the number, but frankly, the angle on the top of that graph here. What we're doing is we're growing that base faster than ever before. So I'm going to share with you a statistic which my competition probably wouldn't be too happy about. But we're growing faster than the nonlinear editing marketplace. We're growing, let's be specific, more than twice as fast as the nonlinear editing marketplace. So what does this mean in terms of where Final Cut sits with its competition? Well, again, according to independent research, when the highest end of our marketplace, the broadcast and post-professional, is choosing a nonlinear editor, they are overwhelmingly selecting Final Cut Pro. So, where does that leave Adobe and Avid? Well, they'd like you to believe that they're competing with us. The truth is, they're in a race for second place. But that's not why we do what we do. This chart is nice, but it's not the reason which we get up in the morning. What we want to do is we want to create great software. We're all about creating an incredible user experience and great software that you guys can use. So the next question is, of course, what's next? I'm sure that's really why you're all here. So now we're going to start unveiling a sneak peek of the next version of Final Cut Pro. And to help me with that task, I'm going to invite onto the stage Pete Steiner, who is the architect of the new version of Final Cut Pro.
Incredibly excited to be here to talk to you about what we've been up to lately. There's been a lot of talk around about what that might be, ranging from nothing at all to just a little incremental update to the existing application to a whole bunch of other interesting rumors about what we've been up to. But I get to be one of the people that shows you exactly what it is we've been up to, which is building a brand new version of Final Cut Pro. This is a rebuilt application built from the ground up, re-architected based on modern technologies and based on leveraging all of the experience we've had building the existing Final Cut since its inception in 1999. So when you're building a new application, what do? Where do you dive in? The first thing you need to do is make sure that you've built an application that's built on modern foundations. We wanted to make sure that we built an application that can carry us as far into the future as the existing platform has carried us up until today, and hopefully even further than that. And the first and most important piece of building a modern application on modern foundations in today's industry is building a 64-bit application. Will no longer be hamstrung by the 4 gigabytes of memory that are available to 32-bit applications, and now can take full advantage of as much memory as you can throw at the application. What this means in practical terms is larger, more complex projects, larger formats, more frames in memory, deeper and richer effect stacks. Basically, all of the things that are ridiculously memory intensive now have full run of all of the memory you can throw at the problem. Thank you. But the other thing that we wanted to do is leverage the best that the platform has to offer to us. We've got a unique competitive advantage here at Apple in that we don't have to worry about dealing with multiple different platforms. We can deal with one platform and make it sing. And so the new Final Cut Pro is built on top of the latest OS technologies, obviously including Cocoa, obviously including things like core graphics, but also leveraging the best of Snow Leopard. And so taking advantage of core animation, OpenCL, Grand Central Dispatch, and a host of other things. What this allows us to do is build an application that scales from the MacBooks that you take out into the field all the way up to the beefiest hardware that you can throw at the problem. But more importantly, it also allows us to build an application that is beautiful, is seamless to use, and really helps you solve the problems that you're trying to solve. So that's all well and good, but from our perspective, that's really the homework. That's not the extra credit. That's the things that any new application coming out of, any new Macintosh application coming out of Apple today really needs to do. We really wanted to take it a step further than that, though, or many steps further than that, and really look at the problems that you're trying to solve and address them in new and unique ways that nobody's ever tried before. And so, with that, I'm going to introduce you to the new Final Cut Pro. The new Final Cut Pro has a completely redesigned interface, focusing first on the 3 primary tasks that every editor needs to do, with quick access to all of the other things that the Pro editors need to do, including things like keyframing, color correction, taking advantage of secondary displays, all of that. But we wanted to focus on, first and foremost, presenting the primary task that everybody needs to do. First, image quality. We wanted to make sure that you're able to deliver the most beautiful, the most pristine, the most interesting content possible to your clients and ultimately to the end viewer. To do that, though, you have to start with a huge amount of media. And to manage that media, we needed to approach the problem in new and different ways so that you can dynamically handle massive quantities of media. But once you've got all that media, you get to the heart of the editing system, which is the editing system within the new Final Cut Pro 10. So I'm going to walk through each of these in a little bit more detail, starting with image quality. This goes back to the modern foundations I was talking to you about before. We wanted to make sure that we're building an application that delivers the highest quality images possible. And in today's market, what that means is building a fully color managed Final Cut based on color sync so that you can trust that the pixels coming off of a profile device track all the way through your workflow to display on the screen and ultimately out to output. But further, we've got a fully floating point linear light-based rendering system. That's it. So what that practically means, though, is not only can you trust that the pixels transfer all the way through the playback and rendering system, but when you're doing effects work and anything like that, we're able to deliver the highest quality possible on the platform. We're also introducing a resolution-independent playback system that allows you to mix formats ranging from traditional SD formats all the way up to today's mobile and HD formats, and ranging all the way up to 2 and 4K formats. So you can create content from a variety of different sources, lay it back to a variety of different sources, without having to worry about the origin of the media that you're working with. So, but both of those things are incredibly processor intensive. They take a lot of resources. To be able to deliver that, we're leveraging some of the best of Mac OS X. We're leveraging Grand Central Dispatch. This allows us to take advantage of all of the cores on your machine, the GPUs that you've got installed in your machine, to scale from your MacBooks all the way up to the highest end machines and render your work as quickly as is possible. What this means in practical terms is this dialogue that you love, built into the application, so with every spare CPU cycle that we can glean, we're constantly so that at the end of the day, you're using the processor resources for the things that you need them to do rather than wasting time on rendering. So that's the image quality piece of the picture. Now let's get into the organization part of the puzzle. And that brings me to the first feature that I want to talk to you about, which is content auto-analysis. Everybody in this room is dealing with an ever-increasing quantity and quality of media. And you need to be able to get that into the editorial system as quickly as possible and begin editing immediately. And so with the new Final Cut Pro 10, you're able to plug modern cameras such as an ABC HD camera into the editorial system and begin the ingest process. And before the ingest is even done, you can start editing. We copy the media off of the camera in the background and start preparing it for the editorial process. And when we're done, we silently sub it out for you in the background so that you're not interrupted waiting for ingest on the way in. But that kind of wasn't enough. That's pretty straightforward, but we also wanted to take advantage of the machines again to prep your media for the organization and editorial process. And that's where content auto-analysis comes in. We, on the way in addition to prepping it for editing, we also do things like some of the straightforward things. Media detection is an audio still, that kind of thing. That's pretty straightforward. But we also kick off background jobs for things like image stabilization. So on the way in, we analyze your media. We give you the option to analyze your media for stabilization so that when you plop it into the timeline, you're already ready to stabilize it. You're already ready to deal with rolling shutter. You're able to deal with all of those things without having to wait for that analysis to happen. It's already happened for you. But we also wanted to do some things to help you in the organization process. During the organization process, you spend a whole bunch of time doing things to figure out what kinds of media you want to use in the process. Some of those things you're uniquely qualified to do, and some of the things the machine can help you out with. And so with Final Cut Pro 10, we're also adding people detection, so that on the way in, we can identify shots with single people, two people, groups of shots, so that when you go to look for interview shots, you just click on the single people group, and you can immediately get to your media. We do similar kind of things with shot detection. Go back. With shot detection. With shot detection, so that we can detect medium shots, close-up shots, wide shots. These are the kind of things that don't really add value to your workflow, but you need them for the organization process. We do that automatically for you before you get them in, so when you're doing your organization process, it's based on things that are specific to the particular piece that you're working on today. But we also wanted to prepare it for the editorial and the effects work, and that's where the one that I just got to comes in. Automatic color balance on the way in. Non-destructive color balance. So that when you bring your media in, we analyze the image and gather the color data so that when you step into color correction, you've already got a pre-balanced image. All of you that have been doing color correction for a long time know that this is the first step, but it's not a good use of your time. And so we wanted to make sure that that was done for you, and you can immediately get into the more interesting parts of color correction. Similarly with audio, on the way in, we detect things like silent channels, channel configuration, stereo, mono, 5.1 surround, all of those kinds of things, and prepare it for the editorial process. But we also look for issues with your audio, so excessive noise, hum, those kind of things, and give you the tools to be able to find those things, and optionally automatically fix those kind of things up, should you choose to, so that when you, again, go to edit, your audio is ready to edit without the common issues that you run into, and you can start the creative process. So that's content audio analysis. It brings me to the next thing that I want to talk to you about, which is range-based keywording. Think about how you do organization in NLEs today. It's a very static process. You put a clip in one bin or the other bin. If you need to find it based on multiple criteria, you end up having to copy it in multiple different places, or you end up having to do things like subclipping and a whole bunch of other things. With keywording and range-based keywording, you can apply multiple different criteria to your media and then go back and find it based on what you remember about your media. So if you take a shot like this, there's a whole bunch of things that are going on in there. It's a shot at the Infineon racetrack, it's an Audi car, it's in the daytime. All of those kind of things can be applied to the entire clip. But furthermore, you can select ranges inside of your clip and apply keywords to that. So for example, this is a sunset shot. I can apply a keyword to that range of media, and immediately I can go back and find not only the clip that has the sunset in it, but the specific range inside of it. Similarly with an overpass, you can go back and find specifically the portions of the media that have what you're looking for. So you don't have to be incredibly rigorous about your organization process. You can just tag it with the things that you need and come back to it when you're trying to find it. Which brings me to the last thing in organization I want to talk to you about, which is smart collections. So content auto-analysis and range-based keywording, and keywording in general, ends up providing you with a soup of information, which is incredibly valuable. Unfortunately, without tools to use that information, it's not nearly as useful. And so with smart collections, we give you a dynamic way of organizing your media based on multiple different criteria. So for example, in a shot like this, we've automatically detected that this shot has a single person in it. But furthermore, we've also discovered, and so in this one-person smart group, that clip shows up as well as all of the other ones. But furthermore, we've also discovered that this clip is a medium shot. This clip exists in the smart collection for media shot as well. This isn't multiple copies of the same clip. This is the same clip in multiple locations based on queries. You can also come up with custom queries based on the kinds of things that you're trying to determine. So things that have a particular keyword, that are AV clips, that are on real whatever. You can come up with a variety of different things and then find them based on those criteria. So that's the organization process. But at the heart of every NLE is the editorial engine. And we really wanted to look at how you actually edit in Final Cut, and how can we actually look at many of the problems in a different way and help you not make the mistakes and be more efficient in how you get your job done. And so the first example I want to give you, this is a pretty straightforward shot. There's primary audio and video for 2 different clips, as well as some ancillary content that is associated with that, and is synced up with those particular clips. Traditional NLEs do a laudable job of making sure that primary audio and video stay together. And when I go to move it, they'll travel with it. Unfortunately, in a shot like this, if I go to slide that down, I've now knocked it out of sync with my secondary content. I have no way of establishing relationships between primary and secondary content, which means it's very easy to forget relationships. Which brings me to the first feature that I want to talk to you about here, which is clip connections. In Final Cut Pro 10, we're introducing clip connections. And what that allows you to do is, first and foremost, primary audio and primary video are locked synced together. On the way in, we establish relationships between those, whether they be both coming off of the same device or whether it be second source audio. We give you the tools to sync those things together based on multiple different criteria, and then they write together. There's no way for the editorial engine to accidentally knock those primary and secondary content out of sync. You can dive in and fix it if you want, you can change it, but the editorial application won't let you accidentally knock those things out of sync. But furthermore, with clip connections, we allow you to establish relationships between secondary content and primary content, and specifically with the specific samples in your audio and specific video frames. So you can establish the relationships that matter in a piece, and then they'll travel together. So if you think about a scene like a car crash, where you've got a bunch of things going on in the picture, you've got screeching tires, you've got the impact sound, all of those kind of things, you can establish those relationships, and then from that point on, they're maintained through the editing process. And more importantly, when you come back to the piece later, you don't have to remember which clips were supposed to stay glued together, because Clip Connections does that for you. And when you hand it off to somebody else, they can't do damage to your work. Oh, and when you slide it down, they travel together. I stole my own thunder again. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that you're able to make all of the selection that you want, and you're able to collect all the media together to do an operation on it. And you want to slide that around in the timeline. As long as you don't have a collision, you don't have a problem. In this case, I want to slide that down, but I actually wanted to slide it down further, so those two primary clips abut. In this situation, though, you've got a problem. You've got a collision in this track. You have to make the choice. You can either pop that second clip out of the way before you slide it over, or you can just slide it over. And in that case, you've actually done damage to the second clip just by a simple editing operation. If I go and move it out of the way, I've punched a hole that I now have to remember to go fix. And depending on your zoom scale, you may not have even noticed that that's happened. Which brings me to the next thing that I want to talk to you about, which is the magnetic timeline. In Final Cut Pro 10, we're introducing the magnetic timeline, which is a much more dynamic way of dealing with your media in the timeline. By simply taking a selection like this with clip connections, selecting that, you can slide a clip down to the timeline, things move out of the way. The timeline takes care of that for you. So sync issues and trim collisions are a thing of the past. So both of those things give you the power to create even more interesting and even more complex projects. And one of the things we discovered, though, is the more complex the project, the more unwieldy it becomes and hard to understand. Which brings me to the next thing I want to talk to you about, which is compound clips. Take a shot like this. This is a pretty straightforward shot. When you're doing the first edit of this, every piece of this media is incredibly important, and furthermore, every single cut is incredibly important. You're trying to get the look exactly the way that you want it. But later in the editorial process, you don't need all of that complexity right at your fingertips. And frankly, it's adding visual noise and visual clutter that's making it harder for you to deal with the building blocks of your story. With compound clips in Final Cut Pro 10, you've got the ability to select everything that you need, and with a single keystroke, collapse that down into a single clip. You haven't lost any of the complexity of that clip. You can still dive in and deal with it, you can still blow it out in line, but further and more importantly, you can deal with it as a singular clip. You can slice it up in time, you can trim it, you can rearrange it, you can do all of the things that you'd want to with an individual clip, which allows you to build building blocks of a story in your timeline. But we wanted to test this and make sure that this actually plays out in real life. And so we took a project that was cut in-house about the Apple stores in the existing Final Cut. This is a pretty straightforward project, right? I mean, it's got a standard level of complexity. It's not horribly complex, but it kind of shows you all of the same kinds of things that I've been talking about before, in terms of primary and secondary content and that kind of thing. And we wanted to test the magnetic timeline, clip connections, and compound clips, and see how it played out in the real world with the new Final Cut Pro 10. This is what that same sequence looks like in the new Final Cut Pro. Every single edit that was in the previous one is in this. Every single cut at every single frame is in this clip, in this sequence. But because of compound clips, clip connections, and magnetic timeline, I've got a much more easy to understand sequence that I can actually do more interesting things with. So for example, if I wanted to take this clip, this interview clip of Ron at the beginning of the sequence, and move it later because it made more sense, all I have to do is pick it up and move it. All of the things that are associated with it travel with it because you've connected them and they exist in the compound clips. So you can rearrange your story to your heart's content without having to worry about doing damage. That's the kind of thing that later in a cut, we get really twitchy about doing because we're worried about doing damage. You don't have to worry about doing damage anymore. Which brings me to the next thing I want to talk to you about, which is the inline precision editor. This is pretty cool. So, standard editorial operations for cutting between clips basically make up the bread and butter of what everybody's doing in Final Cut on a daily basis. And we've got all of the tools that you've come to know and love, or maybe you've come to know and hate in terms of ripple, roll, slide, three-point editing, all of those kind of things. Those are critical to the editorial process. However, one of the problems with those is that it's really hard to understand what media you have available to you. It's really hard to understand where you want to make the cut. You can slide things around and there's a fair amount of guesswork, or you're trying things over and over again. With the inline precision editor in Final Cut Pro 10, you've got the ability to double-click on the seam between two clips and open it up. And you can see all of the media that you've got available to you on both sides of the edit, right in line in the timeline, so that you can see and make the exact right cut. You can drag those clips along, you can slide them, you can roll between the two, you can also click at a specific spot, make your cut, hit return, and you're right back to editing. This vastly simplifies the overall editorial process in the nonlinear editor. This brings me to the last thing that I want to talk to you about in the editing portion, which is a feature that we're calling auditioning. At the end of the day, the most important thing that every editor has to do on a daily basis is make decisions. Whether shot A is better than shot B, whether effect A is better than effect B, or whether composition A is better than composition B. In today's nonlinear editor, that's a really tricky problem. You end up either having to do a couple of things like stacking things high in the timeline on multiple tracks and then enabling and disabling to try things out. Or you do replace edit, undo, replace edit, undo. All of these kind of tricks just to try out single shots. And if you want to try out an actual edit with a whole bunch of things going on, that's actually a bit of a nightmare. You end up having to work in another sequence or all sorts of other tricks to get it to work. With auditioning, we vastly simplified how this works by giving you the tools to collect the options during the editorial process and make the decision when you want to. So in a shot like this is, again, a similar straightforward shot. You've got an interview shot, and I know that I need some supporting content. When I'm doing the initial rough cut, I'm not as concerned about the details of that supporting content. I just know I need some. So in this scenario, all I do is during the organization process, throw these things into an audition. Then when I want to go and make the pick, I go over and I click on the audition control, and it brings up the auditions HUD, which gives you all of your options right there in line that you can flip between very quickly. You can try them out, and because of the magnetic timeline, you don't need to worry about whether or not you're doing damage to your sequence. Your sequence will automatically reflow and make room for it. So imagine if you're working with your director or you're trying things out, you can queue up a whole bunch of decisions, get a whole bunch of options queued up, and then sit down with somebody and say, okay, do you like this shot or this shot, this shot or this shot? And you can very quickly move through the entire timeline and make those kind of decisions. And then when you're done, you simply just collapse it back down and you go back about your editing process. So that's auditioning. That's just some of the many things. I mean, I could be here for hours talking about all the things that are in the new Final Cut Pro.
Okay, we waited for hours.
What will be more interesting is to actually see it in action. And so for that, I'm going to hand the mic over to Randy Avilos, Chief Architect for Video Applications at Apple.
to be here tonight. One of the things I love about working at Apple is that from the top down, we're challenged to innovate. And sometimes that means stepping back and reinventing from the ground up, like we've done here. Really excited to get to show this to you. Let's take a look. So I will say that this is a beta version of the software. We hope it behaves, but we'll see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out, we have a sequence here that was edited together with Final Cut Pro, and we'll play it back, and then I'll show you, use that to show you some of the application. Let's take a look.
I've never driven a race car before. I never actually thought I would.
The Audi R8 definitely is now the fastest car I've ever driven.
It's definitely an adrenaline rush. The first time you press on the gas pedal, it's quite an experience. It's a bit of a jolt.
Actually taking those corners and taking those speeds, it was surprising how much you push yourself back into the seat. It almost feels like the car just wants to go. As soon as you turn the engine on, it just kind of roars right behind you, and the engine's directly behind you.
Being propelled forward by this powerful machine.
You can hear the engine echoing kind of off the walls or off the different surfaces that you're taking around.
I was tearing through a corner and I realized that I was just instinctively braced with my left leg and my arms were pushing me into the seat. Aside from probably flying in a plane, this might be the fastest I've ever, been propelled. It still feels kind of like a dream. Like how did that really happen? Was I really driving that fast around a racetrack in an Audi R8?
You do get that adrenaline rush where you want to just go again, keep going. So it's fun. I can see how you want to keep doing this.
I think I'm going to probably have to get one sooner than I was planning.
So some fun footage up the What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to a prior edit of this sequence, and we'll use that for the demonstration. So we'll start out up in the organization section. So we have our list view up here, and up here in the list view I've got a bunch of clips listed. I've got lots of metadata up here. I can, all sorts of different metadata they can choose to show. I've also got this nice film strip up at the top where I can do skimming. So with skimming, all I do is wave the cursor across the frames and the video plays in the viewer so I can see exactly what's in the clip. What gives you the film strip gives you a really nice look at your content without having to actually even do that. You can actually see it from the film strip. At any place you want, you just wave the cursor over and you can see exactly what it is. It's really nice. Now over on the left, we have a bunch of smart collections. We have some of the ones that Pete was talking about that were auto-analyzed. For example, we have a bunch of shots here that all have one person in them. That's automatically been detected. We have things like close-up that have automatically been detected. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back up to the top here, and we'll choose a clip in here. Let's see, grab a clip, these clips of the car going by, and what I'm going to do is do a little bit of keywording. So when I come in here, we've got a shot, this piece of the shot. I can select this, and I can put a keyword on it by just bringing up the keyword panel, and I'll type in splash. And now that keyword has been added to that portion of the clip. You see from this blue bar up here that that's been added to that portion of that clip. I go back here to the beginning, select another range here where the car is skidding, and I can put in a skid put in a skid keyword. And now I've got that keyword on that portion of the clip. And over here in the left-hand column, you'll notice that I've got a skid and splash smart collection that have automatically been added. If I open up this clip, you can see that I can select, and I can select those two ranges of that clip. This is really powerful. A lot of times you have really long clips. You have a 20-minute clip, and you might have a few 10-second segments in the middle that are interesting. And instead of having to keyword the whole thing with splash and skid, and then have to go back and find the pieces you want, you can tag just the sections that you're interested in. There's also a favoriting mechanism, like the favorite button. It's really powerful, and it's amazing when you have a lot of content and you're trying to find things. You can do this, and the keywords can overlap. So you can have the same section of media can have multiple keywords on it. So it's really powerful for being able to organize your footage. Now, the list view is one way to look at this, but I also have a film strip view. And in the film strip view, we get film strips of all your content with skimming. You get to control the time frame. We're currently set to 1 thumbnail for each 10 seconds of video. And you'll notice, as I scroll down here, without even having to move the cursor around, I can tell what's in each of these clips. I'm sure everybody here has had a situation where you're trying to find some content, and you double-click on something, you open it up, you scrub back and forth, not that one, close it, double-click on something, scrub back and forth. And it's an incredibly time-consuming process. Here, I can just scroll down and I can see, okay, I've got the car coming up the hill, I've got the car skidding along here. You know, you've got all of these clips that are really, really easy to identify. And I can make selections in here, I can put keywords on. I can also just drag a selection over to one of these keyword collections, skid, that automatically puts the skid keyword on that portion of the clip. So now, if I come up and select skid, I'm now looking at those 2 segments of those 2 clips that have that skid keyword on it. It's that easy to get back to the content that you want to. So it's a huge improvement in the organization process in Final Cut Pro 10. So, I'm going to jump down to the timeline now. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my timeline index. The timeline index is actually a chronological listing of everything that's in the timeline. And you can search on this. So you can find any clip, any title, anything you want, you can find it directly here in the timeline index. It also has a section for tags. And this allows you to put markers within a timeline that you can get back to really easily, or even to-do markers that you can assign and then check off as you finish them. I'm going to use this as kind of a cheat sheet to jump around within the timeline. First thing I'm going to do is jump down here a little bit and scroll down and zoom in just a little bit here. So I'm going to demonstrate the magnetic timeline. So you'll see that these clips in here, the stuff that's in the primary storyline, we have these little green lines that show the clip connections to the audio. So if I pick up a clip and move it around, things move around, but the audio that's associated with that clip moves with it. The sync is maintained as I move things around. I can move stuff around earlier and later in the timeline. I can also pick up a clip that has things attached to it, and the audio that's attached to it moves with it automatically. And the timeline rearranges itself as I go. The magnetic timeline also allows me to do things like, for example, if I go to extend this piece of audio, normally when I get to this point where it's going to hit that other audio clip, I wouldn't be able to move it any further. I'd have to go move that other one out of the way and worry about what other things that was going to affect. Here I just move it down a little further, and I go. This gives you an incredible amount of freedom to work on a timeline because you're not messing with things further down in time. Your timelines are no longer fragile. It's really amazing. And one of the things you'll notice here is there are no hard tracks in this interface. There aren't really any tracks. Tracks come and go as needed. So you can have things stacked up really deep in one section and only a few in another section, no problem. Really, really easy. Now, as Pete was talking about, audio sync is something, for each one of these clips that's in the primary storyline, it has the audio, the primary audio is connected to it and appears in the same block within the primary storyline. We do a bunch of different things to line up. If you're doing secondary audio, if you have second source audio, we do a number of things to line those up for you. We can take the time code from those 2 items, line them up. We can even, if you're using, say, a DSLR, you can let the audio run, the mic on the camera run as scratch audio. Take your secondary audio from the second source. When you bring those in, we'll go and analyze the waveforms and figure out how to line those up based on that. Once those have been locked together, nothing that you do at this level of timeline can ever knock those out of sync. Now, if you do get something out of sync for some reason, this clip we've actually deliberately pushed out of sync. So if we play this back,
Or by this powerful machine.
that's way out of sync. So that's easy to fix if that does happen for some reason. I can just double click, and now what's happened is that we've jumped down inside that clip. So I can see the separate audio and the separate video. I'm going to roll back up here to the beginning, and if I zoom in, we can see right here where the slate audio is, but it doesn't happen in the video until a little bit later. One of the other things to notice here is, as I'm zoomed in this far, you'll notice there's kind of a light band here. That represents 1 frame. but the playhead is actually going at a tighter resolution than that. I've got sample accurate resolution for aligning audio. So if I want to put these things back in sync, I can just pick this up, drag it over, the viewer's actually updating, and I can just go to the spot where that lines up. I'll back out a little bit, and we'll go back down to this other section right here. In sync. So at this level I can make adjustments, but when I jump back up a level to my timeline, now they're in sync.
Propelled forward by this powerful.
And at this level, I can't actually knock things out of sync accidentally. It's just not possible. Now, another thing that we have is what we call secondary storylines. A lot of times when you're working on B-roll, you want to be able to do the same types of operations that you do in this primary storyline. So that's what we have up here. I can click and I can drag around. And I'm just going to step back to the beginning to put in one of those demo gremlins I was talking about. So if I go ahead and move this around, you can see that the secondary storyline behaves exactly like the primary storyline does. I can move things around, I can go in here and I can put transitions in on my secondary storyline up here. I can even pick this up and move it around as a little group up above. So it makes it really easy to actually do edits in your B-roll really easily without having to cobble things into little tiny pieces together on a whole bunch of different tracks. It makes editing a lot easier. Let's jump a little bit earlier in the timeline here, and I'll zoom in. Now let's take a look at the precision editor. So we have an edit here.
I mean, this is the first time you pressed it.
So he kind of stumbles a little bit. It'd be nice if he started right as he started to say something interesting. I can just double-click on the edit here, and the precision editor opens up. What I'm looking at here is I can skim and see the content on the left clip before the edit, but I can also see all the content that's available to me past the edit. On the clip to the right, I can see all the clip that's in the edit and all the content that's before the edit. So I can see all of the media in the edit. A lot of times what you end up having to do is, when you want to add some frames, you have to add some extra and then take it back off again. Here you can see them before you even get there. And I can move this around and grab either side of the edit to move things around. I can roll the edit by just grabbing the center. And I'm doing everything using the mouse here because that works well for a demonstration, but everything I'm doing here can be driven from the keyboard. So for example, I just come in, type in +10, and it's going to move by 10 frames. So no worries, everything can be driven from the keyboard. What I'm going to do is, to find the spot where he starts saying something interesting, I'm going to turn on audio skimming. And this is pitch-corrected audio skimming. So right here, when he says the first, I can just skim to that. Makes it really easy to find something. Between the waveform and the audio skimming, it's really easy. And all I have to do is click. And when I click, the edit moves to that point. I can double click on this, and now...
The first time you press on the gas pedal, it's...
Right in that one spot. That's fine for the audio, but he's not looking at the camera. So he doesn't look at the camera until over here. So it'd be really nice if the video, if we stayed on the video with his audio cutting in under. That's really easy to do. I just double click on the audio, and then the audio comes down in a separate element, and then the ends of the audio and video can be adjusted independently. L cuts and J cuts are super easy. All I have to do is grab this and drag over to the front. And now,
the first time you press on the gas pedal, it's quite an experience, isn't it?
Just like that. And you notice as I did this, I can even open up another clip, and I can look at the audio for that one, but if I want to push the audio for this one over, the other one gets out of the way. So L cuts and J cuts. Normally with an L cut and J cut, when you're moving one and you have to change the other one to make space, here you get to adjust things based on what's appropriate for each side of the edit. So you can do things that are much more complicated than a traditional L and J cut much more easily. Let me show you a little bit more audio. I have a little control down here on the right that allows me to select what I see in the timeline. So I can see just an overview if I'd like to keep it simpler. I can also go over and see audio. You can see some nice big audio waveforms in here. For each audio clip, if you want to adjust your fade in and fade out, we have fade handles here. You just grab the fade handle. Keyframe down, keyframe down, keyframe down, keyframe down. I can right click on this to choose how I want to do that. But say I want to adjust the audio in the middle of a clip. I'm going to have to put in keyframe dots, right? Nope. Use my range select tool, grab the line, and turn the lines up or down. And not only that, you'll notice the waveform is adjusting in real time to show you when things are getting close to peak or clipping, right in the waveform. So you can visually balance levels out a lot of the times without even having to listen to it. So I also have full control of the fades on either end. You know, I can do ramps on the side to this, and all the waveforms adjust in real time as I'm doing that. So really powerful. I'm going to go ahead now and switch back to my thumbnails. Put the thumbnails back on. And let's zoom out just a little bit here. Now, this section here where we've got a bunch of audio, we've got a bunch of cuts up here in the main storyline, we've got a bunch of audio down here, and that's all really important as I'm putting that together. But once I get that all figured out, this all becomes kind of visual noise. And so one of the things I can do with compound clips is I can select a group of clips like this, and with a single keystroke, I can collapse that together into a compound clip. That maintains all of the edits exactly as they were, but this now behaves as a single clip that I can trim, I can cut, I can do anything I want to. If I double click on it, I can jump down inside and see all of the stuff that was there and continue to edit this piece. But it lets me do it at different levels so I can control the complexity that I'm looking at in the timeline. So let me jump over a little bit further down here. We'll zoom in a little bit. And now I'm going to show retiming. We've got retiming directly in the timeline. So we've got this nice clip. It's a little slow. It'd be nice to speed that up. All we have to do is select the clip, come up to the menu, select fast, 4x. That clip is now 4 times as fast. But it'd be really nice if we had it going fast at the beginning and slow toward the end. No problem. I'm just going to select the second half of the clip, come back to my menu, choose normal, and now the second part of the clip is at 100%, and the first part's at 400. Really easy. But it's all live, so I can grab this, and I can make this part longer, slower. It's telling me that when it's green, it's 100%, or if it's blue, it's faster. I can adjust this segment over here, back and forth. But notice as I do this, as I pull this shorter, look what's going to happen over there on the right. Those two audio clips are going to bump into each other, which would normally be a huge problem. No, they just get out of the way. I don't have to worry about what's going on further down in my sequence as I'm editing. Think about that. You can just edit in someplace, and everything downstream is going to stay in sync the way you intended. It's a really amazing change in the way that you get to work with this application. I want it. So the next thing I want to show is color matching. So we have this clip, it's a sunset shot, and the next one is the cars driving away. It'd be nice if those two matched. All I have to do is come up here and choose match color. And this brings up a 2-up display. And then I just select the clip I want to match to. So if we want to match to the interview shot, I just click. If I want to match to the inside of the car, sunset shot. Now, one thing I'll show you, see the orange bar up there that's there? That's the render bar that's up there. And, oh, it's on. There's extra cycles, renders. You don't have to do anything. It's automatically doing that all the time in the background, making sure the stuff is rendered. It's pretty amazing. So, that quickly, we've done a match. Look at a nice color match between those things with a click. So, pretty cool. Let me jump down a little bit further here. So, we have this shot here. This is shot on a GoPro camera. This brings up a really good point. This piece has a bunch of different types of content in it. Final Cut Pro 10 allows you to mix and match content without having to do any sort of transcoding. So, we can take in the footage from your DSLRs. You can take in ADC HD. You can take in stuff from a GoPro, and you can just edit it natively. All the timeline. You can mix and match sizes. Doesn't matter. It just takes care of it. So this footage, you'll notice up in the roof of the car, it's kind of muddy. It's kind of black there. So it'd be nice to do a little color correction here. So I'm going to go ahead and choose to show my color board. And when I choose the color board, I've got I can adjust the color, the saturation, or the exposure. I've got a master control, and then I have controls for highlights, midtones, and shadows. So I can go ahead and just grab the shadow control and just bring up the shadows. So we'll bring up a little bit of detail up in the roof of the car. So that's my primary color correction. If I want to do some secondary color correction, say I want to adjust just her face, I can do that by just adding another color correction. And then I'm going to do a color range. So I'm going to use my eyedropper to pick a color range. And I can also do it based on the shape. And we've got really nice shape controls in here, where you can choose the size, move it around, you can choose the fall off. These things can be animated over time, so you can follow things around. And then I just go over to the color board, and say we want to go into saturation. I can pull the saturation down, I can pull it up, and I'm just adjusting it on that color range and on that section of the clip. So some really impressive color corrections, primary and secondary color correction, built right into the application. Now, with this clip here, it would be really nice to we want to push her up a little bit further into the corner of the frame. So I'm just going to go up, I'm going to click my cropping control. This allows me to either trim the clip, I can crop it, I can even do a Ken Burns effect where I can pan across the video really easily. I'm going to select crop, and I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to bring my crop control in, move her up, done. She's kind of cropped over on this side, a couple of clicks. But now, I've got some footage underneath of this car. It'd be nice if I actually animated this up and across. So all I'm going to do is just choose a frame. I'm going to bring up my keyframing controls and add one keyframe at this point. I'll move my playhead a little bit earlier. Now I'm just going to grab the center of the frame, drag it over. I get nice guides to show me where the centers are. Then that automatically puts in a keyframe. I'm going to go earlier, and I'm going to pull this down. Pull that down. And I get a nice Bezier path there. I can also say that I just want that to be a linear path. And so now, when I do this, you'll see this come up and move over. Just like that, keyframe directly in the timeline. But one of the things I notice here is that as this is kind of going across, notice the clip underneath ends, and we see a flash of that interview shot coming back in there. So what I can do is I can click here, and I can show my animation graph. So I can actually see all of the keyframes in place in the timeline. So for example, I can grab this keyframe, and I can drag it back over here to where that clip underneath still exists. And so now, I no longer see that flash of that other clip underneath. I can see everything in context. Timeline is really powerful. I'm going to jump down. The last thing I want to demonstrate is auditions. So this is something where a lot of times, see, the closing shot here, this is a good example of something where, as you're editing, you potentially find shots that you think, oh, this would be good as a closing shot. But you don't really want to make that decision yet. You want to do that kind of toward the end. So you can collect these shots together into an audition group, and then you can switch between them very easily and try them out. Now you notice, these are all different lengths. So as that's happening, because of the magnetic timeline and the clip connections, everything to the right is just sliding around, staying in sync exactly like you intended it to. To try these out, all I have to do is press the space bar. When I want to try the next one, press the right arrow. Space bar again. Try another one. That one feels a little bit long. I'm going to go back to this middle one, press return, shots in place, nothing's out of sync. Just as easy as that. Director, and you want to stack up a bunch of decisions so they can come in, make the decisions one right after the other, and get out. This makes it so much easier to do that sort of thing. So that's just a few of the features in the new Final Cut Pro 10, and thank you very much for letting me be the one to show you.
You wish. So, the new Final Cut Pro 10, like Pete and Randy said, it's really all about three things. It's about image quality, being able to work with everything from found over there with DV, all the way up to 4K, and being able to deal with all of that color sync and all of that high quality media and render it all in the background and keep it all going all the time. And then organization, being able to have all that content ingested and put into a sensible structure so you know exactly what you're doing before you even begin. That's an incredible leap forward. That means that you're already halfway there before you even hit the timeline. And speaking of the timeline, what about that incredible timeline? Nobody will ever have to worry about sync issue ever again. And that's just incredible. So, the new... That was a sneak peek. That was the worldwide sneak peek. Just so you realize, we've had a few people who have been using this on our beta program, using it in the real world, who have had given us quite a lot of feedback. And I just wanted to share just 2 or 3 of those things with you because I just want to let you know just how other people, other than Apple people, are thinking about the product right now. So let's start out with Outpost Digital in New York. Final Cut Pro 10 is blazingly fast. I experienced out-of-this-world performance working in 1080p and even 4K resolutions. In LA, I love the new interface. The magnetic timeline is a huge advancement which lets me focus on editing instead of worrying about sync. Editors just want to make great cuts, and Final Cut Pro 10 makes that easy. And then finally, Dean Devlin, who anybody who knows him realizes that he's a big Final Cut fan, is here tonight. And once again, Apple brings us a game changer. New era of digital editing. So these guys have had it for a little while, so the question is, when can you have it? Well, I'm pleased to tell you that we will be shipping in June. How can you get it? Well, you'll be able to download it directly onto your Mac via cost. Last, we've had a number of different flavors. We've had upgrade pricing, we've had Final Cut Express, we've had Final Cut Studio. So we decided that we wanted to really do away with all of that. We wanted to greatly simplify the pricing structure and make it very, very easy for you to decide that you want to get a copy of Final Cut Pro. So we've decided to make it available for the amazing price of $299. So the only thing that's left really for me to say is, frankly, thank you. Thank you very much.